The intricate architecture of high-stakes royal security is undergoing its most significant operational shift in recent memory, a development that carries profound implications for the structural unity of the British monarchy. At the centre of this gathering storm is the impending summer return of Prince Harry to United Kingdom soil, a visit scheduled for July that has quietly mobilised senior intelligence officials and Home Office planners. For months, public speculation has focused on the intense legal friction regarding who qualifies for automatic state-funded protection, but behind closed doors, a compromise is taking shape that fundamentally alters the nature of the Duke of Sussex's presence in his homeland. This new development comes directly on the heels of major security breaches involving other high-profile figures within the royal estate, establishing a highly tense atmosphere that makes the upcoming summer travel season an absolute logistical minefield. As specialized units within metropolitan law enforcement quietly prepare to escalate their operational footprint, the public is left to wonder how a conflict that has dragged on through years of bitter litigation can suddenly find an unofficial, highly specialized resolution without an open policy shift. This delicate evolution of security protocols serves as a powerful reminder of how deeply personal grievances and state infrastructure intersect at the very highest levels of British institutional life. To fully understand the gravity of the impending deployment, one must look closely at the invisible mechanisms that govern the public safety of individuals whose lives are inherently defined by elevated threat matrices. For years, the public narrative surrounding the Sussex family has been dominated by a sense of permanent displacement, with various representatives emphasizing that a return to British soil was functionally impossible without the comprehensive security apparatus typically reserved for working members of the institution. Yet, as plans solidify for a prominent international gathering in the industrial heartland of Birmingham, the specialized frameworks responsible for VIP protection are being quietly recalibrated to ensure absolute operational success. The sheer scale of the upcoming event means that local authorities and elite special branch teams will be required to execute an exceptionally complex, highly visible strategy that balances public access with impenetrable personal defense. This escalating tension forms the perfect backdrop for a story that is as much about political survival and institutional control as it is about physical safety, forcing observers to question the true motivations driving both sides of this prolonged institutional standoff. If you value deep, independent reporting that cuts through official public relations narratives to reveal the authentic mechanics of royal logistics and state power, please consider taking a brief moment to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an investigative update. The current atmosphere of heightened vigilance has been compounded by alarming real-world incidents that prove the dangers facing the broader royal circle are anything but theoretical. Just last month, an intense confrontation occurred in a quiet country lane in Norfolk, where an individual wearing a balaclava actively charged down Prince Andrew, creating an immediate tactical crisis that sent shockwaves through the royal security establishment. Although the individual was swiftly intercepted and subsequently faced prosecution after authorities discovered an array of potential weapons within his vehicle, the incident exposed critical vulnerabilities in how non-working royals are insulated from targeted threats. This sudden and violent breach immediately triggered a wave of analytical assessments across the British media landscape, with senior commentators highlighting that regardless of public sentiment towards specific individuals, a successful assault on any high-profile member of the family on British soil would represent a catastrophic failure of state intelligence. The alarming reality of the Norfolk incident has effectively shattered any lingering institutional complacency, forcing the entities responsible for threat assessment to view Prince Harry's upcoming travel schedule through an entirely new lens of urgency. It is within this specific climate of renewed vulnerability and operational reassessment that the state has begun structuring a significantly enhanced, bespoke defense plan for the Duke's highly anticipated summer arrival. As the countdown to July continues, the precise nature of this upgraded security framework remains shrouded in the strict confidentiality that governs all elite law enforcement activities within the United Kingdom. Observers have long noted that the existing arrangement, which technically requires a strict 28 days of advance notice and a meticulously detailed itinerary before any deployment of state assets can be authorized, has been viewed by the Sussex team as an intentional restriction designed to emphasize their separation from the core monarchy. However, recent indicators suggest that while the overarching legal framework has not been officially rewritten, the operational reality on the ground during the upcoming visit will be vastly superior to previous iterations, effectively granting an unprecedented level of tactical support. This highly sophisticated compromise appears designed to neutralize the potential for public spectacles or security failures that could be heavily criticized on the global stage, allowing the state to maintain its formal policy boundaries while ensuring absolute physical control. The unfolding situation presents a fascinating study in institutional flexibility, illustrating how the rigid structures of British governance can silently adapt to acute contemporary pressures when the stakes are deemed sufficiently high. The stage is now fully set for a profound confrontation between rigid procedural rules and the fluid demands of international celebrity safety, a dynamic that will be fully tested the moment the Duke steps onto British tarmac. The operational heart of this escalating security dispute lies within a highly secretive, deeply conservative governmental entity known as the Royal and VIP Executive Committee, commonly referred to by its institutional acronym RAVEC. Operating under the administrative umbrella of the British Home Office, this obscure body is comprised of senior civil servants, elite law enforcement chiefs, and top-tier palace officials who hold absolute authority over the distribution of taxpayer-funded armed protection. For decades, RAVEC operated entirely in the shadows of the British state, quietly assessing threat environments and assigning protection details without public scrutiny or interference. However, the decision of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to step back from senior institutional duties in early 2020 cast an intense spotlight on this committee, transforming its procedural mechanics into a central battleground for royal status and state power. The fundamental mandate governing RAVEC is deceptively simple. Automatic, round-the-clock armed security is strictly reserved for working members of the royal family who maintain permanent residency within the United Kingdom. When the Sussexes relocated 5,500 miles away to California, they effectively exited this narrowly defined cohort, triggering an immediate and unyielding administrative downgrade that would spark 6 years of bitter institutional warfare. The immediate consequence of that relocation was the implementation of a bespoke case-by-case security framework, an arrangement that RAVEC viewed as an exceptionally fair and flexible compromise, but which the Duke of Sussex routinely characterized as an unworkable administrative punishment. Under these specific guidelines, the Duke is required to provide a mandatory 28 days of notice before arriving on British soil, submitting a comprehensive, minute-by-minute itinerary detailing his movements, public appearances, and private lodgings. Upon receiving this detailed plan, intelligence analysts and specialized units evaluate the specific threat matrix surrounding the visit and allocate police resources accordingly. While this framework has successfully provided significant law enforcement support during past visits, including the temporary closure of train carriages and targeted route security, the Sussex legal team has consistently portrayed it as a deliberate degradation of their international standing. They have frequently argued that a mere liaison phone number at Scotland Yard is a vastly inadequate substitute for the seamless, permanent protective blanket they once enjoyed, claiming the arrangement leaves them uniquely vulnerable to sophisticated hostile actors. This ongoing administrative friction reached a flashpoint during a previous high-profile legal proceeding in London, when a security incident involving an alleged stalker was instantly leveraged by the Sussex camp to emphasize the apparent failures of the bespoke system. According to various accounts, a persistent individual who had previously managed to gain proximity to the couple during an international tour was discovered sealed within the facilities of a prominent hotel hosting a charitable gala, before subsequently attempting to approach the Duke at a specialized medical clinic. While the Duke's private, ex-military security personnel successfully intercepted the individual without further incident, the Sussexes immediately utilized the event to mount a fierce public relations campaign against the Home Office. They asserted that the proximity achieved by this individual demonstrated a catastrophic vulnerability in the state's ad hoc protection plan, asking what the institutional fallout would be had the intruder been armed with a lethal weapon. Conversely, traditional security analysts counter-argued that the successful interception proved the existing intelligence and security apparatus worked precisely as designed, effectively neutralizing a minor nuisance before any genuine threat could materialize. Faced with what he perceived as an inflexible bureaucratic wall, Prince Harry initiated a massive multi-million-pound legal crusade against the Home Office, filing a lawsuit demanding a formal judicial review of RAVEC's decisions. This high-stakes legal gambit, which eventually progressed all the way to the Court of Appeal, has cost an estimated £1.4 million in taxpayer and private funds, yielding a series of definitive legal defeats for the Duke. In February 2024, the High Court ruled unequivocally that the committee's decision to implement the bespoke framework was entirely lawful, rational, and procedurally fair, flatly rejecting the notion that the Duke was entitled to special exemptions. Undeterred, the Duke pushed forward to the appellate level, where senior judges once again dismissed his claims, solidifying the legal principle that state-funded armed police officers are not a private security force available for hire by individuals who have voluntarily chosen to resign from public duties. The emotional intensity underlying this legal battle became undeniable when the Duke participated in a highly publicized interview, during which he articulated deeply paranoid sentiments, suggesting that powerful figures within the royal institution actively desired history to repeat itself. A direct and chilling reference to the tragic fate of his late mother, the tactical reality of Prince Harry's security dilemma is further complicated by genuine, highly documented international terror threats that make his public movements inherently hazardous. During the extensive appellate hearings, it was officially disclosed that the global terrorist organization Al-Qaeda had published an explicit directive calling for the Duke's immediate assassination. This severe escalation in threat level was a direct retaliation for the Duke's highly controversial disclosure in his personal memoir, where he explicitly detailed killing 25 Taliban fighters during his military deployments in Afghanistan. Military strategists and security experts globally expressed profound disbelief at the inclusion of such data, noting that publicizing specific operational kill counts violates deep-seated military protocol and provides an optimal propaganda tool for extremist recruitment. Critics have suggested that broadcasting such inflammatory information was either an act of monumental foolishness or a calculated attempt to artificially inflate his personal threat matrix, thereby forcing the hands of the British authorities to restore his permanent protection status out of sheer institutional panic. Despite his continuous string of courtroom defeats, the Duke has recently achieved a major, under-the-radar bureaucratic victory that has stunned royal commentators and intensified the underlying palace drama. Through persistent, direct correspondence with the Home Secretary, the Duke successfully bypassed traditional administrative resistance to secure a formal review by the Risk Management Board, the exact procedural mechanisms he had spent years fighting for in court. This unexpected administrative concession has fueled intense speculation that a highly specialized, quiet accommodation is being engineered behind closed doors, a development that stands in stark contrast to the rigid public declarations of the government. This sudden bureaucratic movement has caused significant nervousness among top law enforcement chiefs and political figures who are acutely aware of how deeply unpopular a taxpayer-funded security restoration would be with the British public. The situation is rendered even more complex by the fact that while the Duke maintains that the United Kingdom is far too dangerous to visit without full state protection, he and his wife regularly undertake high-profile international tours to regions with historically volatile safety environments, including recent extensive trips to Colombia and Nigeria. The ongoing weaponization of the security issue has created an immense strain on relationships within the core royal family, with senior palace officials interpreting the Duke's public declarations as a form of emotional blackmail directed at his father. For months, representatives for the Sussexes have consistently briefed the international press that if the king wishes to establish a genuine relationship with his young grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet, he must personally intervene to resolve the ongoing security deadlock. This narrative went down exceptionally poorly within the walls of Buckingham Palace, particularly following the firm decision to evict the Sussexes from Frogmore Cottage immediately following the passing of Queen Elizabeth. By framing the lack of state protection as the sole barrier preventing their children from visiting their grandfather, the Sussexes have constructed an intense grievance architecture that appears designed to force an institutional surrender. The palace establishment, however, has remained largely unmoved by these public maneuvers, viewing them as a transparent attempt to subvert established state protocols for personal leverage, leaving the young children caught in the middle of a cold, generational standoff. The deeper geopolitical and domestic implications of this security stalemate are now converging on a highly coordinated, multi-year strategy orchestrated behind palace walls, an operation that insiders have increasingly referred to as Project Thor. This ambitious and highly delicate plan appears designed to facilitate the slow, calculated reintegration of Prince Harry into official state-endorsed spaces, a move that is creating immense friction at the very highest levels of the royal hierarchy. The most striking evidence of this hidden consensus emerged through recent authoritative reports, indicating that King Charles has officially signaled his personal intention to support and potentially open the upcoming Invictus Games in Birmingham. By aligning himself with the one remaining Sussex venture that is universally viewed as unimpeachable and highly successful, the monarch is sending a powerful, unmistakable signal to the British establishment and the global public. This calculated endorsement effectively transforms what was once a private, highly contentious family dispute into an official matter of state interest, positioning the Duke of Sussex not as a completely severed exile, but as an official figure executing a major international initiative under the direct gaze of the Crown. This gathering institutional momentum represents a profound challenge to the rigid operational model favoured by Prince William, who remains absolutely and unyieldingly opposed to any public rehabilitation of his younger brother. The Prince of Wales has consistently argued that the palace must strictly adhere to the historical precedent established by the handling of Edward VIII, who became the Duke of Windsor following his historic abdication in 1936. Following that massive constitutional crisis, the British state implemented a policy of absolute permanent severance, completely isolating the former monarch from the official mechanics of royalty and state power. Throughout his remaining decades in exile, the Duke of Windsor returned to British soil a mere handful of times, with his final return occurring in a casket for his state burial. Prince William firmly believes that allowing Prince Harry to operate as a rogue, quasi-royal figure, completely freed from the intense institutional discipline imposed on working members of the family, while simultaneously enjoying state-funded protection and royal endorsements, poses a catastrophic threat to the long-term stability of the monarchy. The core danger is not a physical threat to life, but a permanent operational disruption, where the Sussexes can continuously steal the public narrative, dominating headlines and undermining the meticulously planned schedule of the working crown. The immediate obstacle facing Prince Harry in his desire to establish a permanent dual hemisphere existence is that despite his highly publicized life in Southern California, his primary organizational infrastructure remains deeply anchored within the United Kingdom. Major charitable entities and corporate structures, such as the Invictus Games Foundation, Scotty's Little Soldiers, and his sustainable travel initiative, Travelist, are all headquartered and legally registered on British soil. Having seen lucrative commercial arrangements with major American streaming platforms and media conglomerates either completely collapse or stall indefinitely in development limbo, the Duke is acutely aware that his long-term cultural relevance and financial viability are intimately tied to his remaining institutional roots in his homeland. His strategic ambition is to secure a permanent base of operations within the United Kingdom, allowing him to spend significant portions of the year executing high-profile public initiatives. However, the rigid security barriers established by RAVEC have effectively trapped the Sussexes within a self-inflicted logical corner. Having spent 6 years declaring the country fundamentally unsafe for their family, they cannot easily return without a massive, highly visible loss of face unless they receive the comprehensive state protection they have so aggressively demanded. This complex psychological and operational deadlock has effectively isolated the Sussex children, Archie and Lilibet, who are growing up entirely detached from their paternal heritage and the extended royal family. Royal commentators increasingly wonder how these young individuals will react as they reach greater maturity and begin to fully comprehend that their grandfather is the reigning King of England, a monumental historical reality from which they have been completely sheltered. Reports from within the palace indicate that multiple formal offers have been extended for the family to stay within the highly secure boundaries of the major royal estates, such as Sandringham or Balmoral, during the summer seasons. However, these invitations have been consistently rejected because the Sussexes remain entirely unwilling to submit to the strict institutional rules and behavioural parameters dictated by the palace establishment. They demand to navigate the United Kingdom entirely on their own terms, free from centralised control, a stance that the core monarchy views as a complete non-starter. ensuring that the generational divide remains completely unbridgeable for the foreseeable future. The ultimate testing ground for this newly engineered, beefed-up bespoke security arrangement will occur on the highly anticipated date of July 10th, when Prince Harry is scheduled to arrive in Birmingham for a major promotional event marking the countdown to the upcoming Games. This crucial visit will provide absolute clarity regarding the true state of play behind closed doors. If the Duchess of Sussex and the young children accompany him, it will signal that the state has completely surrendered to their intense lobbying efforts, granting the full array of automatic, state-funded armed security. However, top intelligence insiders view this scenario as exceptionally unlikely, predicting that the Duke will arrive entirely alone, utilizing an upgraded version of the ad hoc protection package that successfully balances physical safety with an absolute denial of royal status. This critical compromise ensures that while the British state fulfills its core obligation to prevent a catastrophic security failure on its territory, it refuses to allow security protocols to be used as a tool for personal social elevation or institutional leverage. As the dust begins to settle on this 6-year conflict, it becomes increasingly clear that the intense public warfare waged by the Sussexes has ultimately damaged their own long-term objectives. Had they chosen to negotiate their complex security requirements through quiet, traditional diplomatic channels behind closed doors, they likely would have secured a highly favorable, permanent arrangement years ago. Instead, by constructing a massive, highly aggressive grievance narrative through international television interviews, explosive memoirs, and bitter litigation, they forced the British state into a defensive position where compromise became politically hazardous. In its effort to regain total control of the institutional narrative, the Crown is utilizing its vast administrative weight to slowly absorb and neutralize the Sussex